I wish I could live in this space. I'd be doing my work under this thing and vibing to some Andre 3000. Yes, yes. I had to hide this mop over here. No, you're you're good. I should record some.
Hello, 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 Concepcion, the photo shoots. Thank you. Hello. I don't think so. Hello? Hello?
Is it on?
It is, but it's very low. I think they need to turn the music off. Hello? Okay, wonderful. Hello, good morning. Welcome, everybody. Isn't this the most amazing space? So this is the scent of lavender. This is the feeling of water. This is the music of Andre 3000. This is the art of David Alabo. And this is the session on decolonizing futures. We said, what perspectives can Afrofuturism offer for a new techno-sci-art consciousness? What the hell does that mean? We just wanted to have the longest title on the program. Thank you for honoring the invitation. My name is Geci Karuri-Sebina. I'm here with amazing friends and colleagues, and this can go down just a bit more. David Alabo and Ingrid LaFleur. I'll introduce them both in a little bit. But just by way of opening, when we were asked to offer a session at this conference, I was really excited. I was excited because I knew exactly who I'd like to have a conversation with and to share work from. But also, you know, I think for many people here, probably you've heard of Afrofuturism. I suppose you're here for that reason. Some of you might be interested, some of you might be using it. But I think often it sounds like some side cute thing that might be happening. And actually, for me, and I don't consider myself, in fact, I said to them, I'm not an expert in Afrofuturism, but I do know a few. I think for many of us, the future is about inspiration, things that matter to us and things that feel resonant. And I know for myself, as a young African, as a person in the future space as an African, I've often felt a disconnect between things I know and feel and the science and the methods that we use sometimes. And it's been really wonderful to find spaces and people of inspiration to do something a bit different. And I think maybe many people feel that in their various ways. And so for me, the spaces of African futurism, the spaces of Afrofuturism, as method, as art, as music, as science, have really been a feeding pool. So it's not a space I'm an expert in, it's a space I feed from. And I hope it's a space I also contribute to because we are in a continuum, and I hope that's what we'll be able to present today and to share from our perspectives. The other thing, in a space obviously of cultural appropriation, there's always this question of, well, what can you say and what can't you say? What can you use and can you not use? I have been a bit alarmed to see some presentations on Afrofuturism given by people where I was a little bit suspicious. So I'm really happy to have a panel that I'm very confident to stand behind, but also maybe to have that difficult conversation, because we are in a global culture, but we are also in spaces where we all have cultures that we come from and we feel particular ways about. I think there was a session this morning where people were making some comments and asking some questions about how do we feel about the points about language, or how do we feel about the points about culture. So hopefully this is a space that allows us to do one particular thing and maybe have some other difficult conversations. Anyway, enough about me and enough about us. I just wanted to give a shout out to DJ Cliff Barron, who helped with the soundtrack for today, and to David for allowing us to use your art to inspire us.
Oh, my pleasure.
Welcome. And Ingrid for inspiring the scent of lavender. Okay, excellent. So what we're going to do today We're going to have two presentations, one from the arts and one from our Foresight Futures space, which is really cool, I think, but bringing in some other elements. We'll have a bit of engagement between the panel, and then we'll have some space for the room. We're going to try and keep the Q&A from the room like short, sharp questions, not your speech for the day, because these are the speech givers. If you ask quickly, they can answer. Okay, cool. So I'm going to ask for this to be down just a tad bit more, just so that people who are, yeah, we don't want people feeling distracted. Oh, it can't be any lower? I think it can. We tested it earlier. Yeah. Oh, they can't? Oh, okay, fine. Okay, somebody knows what they're doing there. Okay, excellent. Thank you so much, team. And thank you, by the way, for the team that made this room possible. A lot of rules were bent to make some things here possible, and we really appreciate that. So let's go right into it. I want to start by finding my bios, which I have done. We're going to start with David Alabo, who is an amazing multidisciplinary artist from Ghana, Morocco. I think many of us are from many interesting places.
Yes. Ghana and Morocco, yeah.
Ghana and Morocco. And he does work in speculative digital arts, highlighting the importance of African futurism as a tool for addressing some of the complex challenges that really require innovative solutions. So he explores themes of displacement, of solitude, of introspection through this kind of work in speculative Afro-surrealist art. The works feel, and I can attest from what I've seen, both fantastical and familiar, and have led to him having some amazing collaborations with brands like HBO, Apple, Adobe, Meta. And he's also been featured on platforms like CNN, ArtX Lagos, Art Dubai, and where I first met him at MIT.
Yes.
He's also got an ongoing exhibition for those who are in Cologne, Germany, at the Max Ernst Museum called Surreal Futures. You can catch him at davidalabo.com. I was saying all of that just to, because he won't probably like give himself props, so that was me giving him props.
I will, but still.
Oh, he might do.
Yeah, I will.
But David, over to you. Thank you so much for honoring this invitation.
No, thank you for having me, and thank you for everybody for being here. It's a real honor to be here to share our stories. And yes, a quick introduction, as Geci has rightfully done. My name is David Alabo. I'm a visual artist based in Accra, Ghana, and my heritage, I'm fortunate enough to be able to tap into both my West African heritage from Ghana and also my North African roots, where my mother is from. And essentially, I'm a living embodiment of Afrofuturism, African futurism. And by that, I mean my definition of it. You know, everybody has a nuanced definition of what Afrofuturism is, but for me personally, it's, you know, imagining equitable futures, imagining alternate realities where people, especially black people, people from Africa and the diaspora, are not only empowered, but also given a sense of hope and optimism. And at the same time, we are radically decolonizing narratives and perspectives that have long been entrenched in our mind and our collective conscience. So it's an active effort every day to, you know, break the cycles that we're used to and open people up to new possibilities, new realities. Yeah, so essentially what I do is I build worlds, and I'm a world builder. And what I mean by that is I create universes where the laws don't necessarily abide to what we know as reality. And I believe that that is quite empowering, is quite freeing. And it's more than just building a world, it's about infusing it with a history, a culture, and placing it in a sense where you can feel like you're transported from reality, but also given a chance to reflect on what you know, but in a different context. So why I believe world building is incredibly important, especially from an African perspective, is that it allows us to, again, reimagine not just the futures of Africans, but also the past. You know, once you're able to reimagine it, it sort of, you know, challenges stereotypical understandings or depictions of what we consider Africa or people in the diaspora to be. And, you know, when I'm building these worlds, when I'm creating these images, I am tapping into the history that is existed, that is real, you know, and it's often been mired with painful topics and issues that are very real and have had serious impact. So the Afrofuturist, well, for me, it's, you know, you're living on a fine line between respecting the past, which is what has actually happened, but not being bound by it, in a sense that you are giving yourself space and the opportunity to imagine worlds and people in a different context. And I think, you know, we have long been, especially black people, have long been, you know, shown that this is the one way we've lived, this is our history, and I just think it's refreshing to allow a different discourse. And as I've said before, art like this, I believe, when I hear people tell me about how it makes them feel, is that it gives them a sense of strength, you know. There are very few spaces where, unfortunately, in this current age, where black people feel not only safe, but also free to express themselves fully without feeling that they are, you know, these in different settings, in different spaces. It allows us to, you know, talk about these quite tough, painful topics, but in a different space. It allows us to, you know, not be afraid to think about these things, you know. And through the process of it, personally, when I create these images, it's very technologically driven, you know, but I don't want the art to look like quote unquote digital, but the process in which I do it are very much entrenched in the mediums of 3D software. I sculpt in virtual reality. So in a sense, that's also my definition of Afrofuturism, is pushing the boundaries of what we consider technically possible, you know, and finding new mediums to tell stories that have, you know, long existed for millennia. And putting it through a different medium allows you to come up with results that are at the same time familiar, but at the same time fantastical and surreal. So I'm not just an Afrofuturist. I strongly believe in the power of surrealism, in a sense that surrealism allows me as a person, as an individual, to tap into my own subconscious and to find my own identity through the art. So that's the real reason I started pursuing the arts, was to make sense of my own multinational sort of identity that was all over the place, but art gave me an umbrella to really bring in all these interests, all these ideas, and all these issues personally and struggles that I faced as a person. You know, I had the blessing to, you know, with my father, we traveled a lot when I was young, and I would often be the only, other than him and I, sometimes we'd be the only black people there, you know, when we lived in India, when we lived in Russia as a kid. So for me, it was tough to make sense of it. My dad was extremely supportive, and, you know, he definitely gave me the best parenting a father could, but at the same time, I had to learn a lot of lessons on my own. And essentially that journey through discovering myself is what I believe Afrofuturism or African futurism. You know, there's a debate on what exactly the terms are, but as somebody that's both African and also lived in the diaspora, I feel like I can understand both perspectives. And, you know, in summary, I feel like world building, particularly in an Afrofuturist context, is a powerful tool for not only storytelling, but for representation. When you can see yourself in a larger than life context, and it's not limited, or it's not exclusively for black people. I believe everybody can feel that sense of empowerment and strength. And these are issues that we all face, you know, and I think it's important to current issues, you know, but putting it in a surreal context, putting it in a context that is visual arts allows you to, invites the viewer to first imagine themselves in this place, and then once they dive a little deeper, they can realize that there are sub-themes of quite serious issues, you know. But I think it's important to allow people the space to first appreciate the visual art and then reflect on some of the deeper connotations that are underneath them. And I will sort of summarize something that I wrote that I think quite, you know, succinctly expresses how I feel about my practice, is that as we journey through the rich landscapes of Afrofuturism, we are not merely spectators of, you know, fanciful tales. We're witnessing a powerful reclamation and a redefinition of narratives that have long been overlooked or distorted. In these vividly imagined worlds, the tapestry of African cultures is not just preserved, but it's interwoven with threads of futuristic possibilities, creating a vision that transcends time and space. This is not just about crafting stories or making art. It's about rewriting the narrative of an entire continent and its people. It's a testament to the resilience and the creative spirit that is embodied in the African person and also the diaspora. But it's more than just an artistic endeavor for me, personally. It's a bold declaration that the future belongs to those who dare to reimagine it. And in this reimagining, every stroke of creativity is a step towards a future where diversity, equality, and inclusivity are not only a basic, but are actually something that is a part of our life. It's not an ideal to aspire to, it's just a way of life, you know? And as we embrace these narratives, we're not just consuming art. We are participating in a cultural and intellectual revolution, one that promises to redefine our understanding of both history and also our collective future. So that's what I stand for. That is what I breathe and live every day. And it's a journey to always improve, always learn, and also not be afraid to correct myself, not be afraid to know that if I make a mistake, I have the space to correct myself. And through that journey of my own personal discovery, I hope that people can get that sense of hope, empowerment, but not in an idealistic sense that this is a utopia, you know, we're real. I mean, we deal with issues of, we live in a world where the narratives are often quite tinged with dystopia and, you know, negativity. And as I said before, the Afrofuturist walks a fine line between respecting the past but also not being limited by it. So that is essentially what I believe Afrofuturism is, and I'm grateful to be able to do it every day and to have people that are interested in it to talk about it. And I think, you know, that discourse is essential if we want to build a future where everybody is included and everybody is respected and honored. Yeah, so thank you.
Thank you so much for that, David. I don't want to sound like a hype man here, but you said the future belongs to those who dare to reimagine it, and I thought that was really worth repeating. And I was looking for one big message, the unbounding, the being unbounded, and you've spoken about that both in terms of your method, using digital but not being bounded by that, and then the unbounding of ideas and about futures. I think that's such a powerful message, and thank you so much for your art.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you. So without further ado, because we're going to come back to you, we're going to go on to Ingrid. So Ingrid LaFleur, so there's a common piece here, although it's not what she's going to talk about today, but you'll notice from her slides, and I know from how I met her as well, Ingrid has a rich and beautiful profession, I think, and practice that includes the arts. But in more recent years, if I'm not wrong, has gone into sort of studying more traditional foresight, but has been an Afrofuturist for many years now, and I think we really look forward to hearing about this. So Ingrid is a cultural advisor, a futures researcher, an Afrofuture theorist, and a pleasure activist, which people can talk to her about later. Focused on creating equitable futures through art, culture, and emerging technologies. So Ingrid founded the Afrofuture Strategies Institute, which facilitates the development of futures consciousness by combining foresight methods and the cultural movement of Afrofuturism, which is what I'm really glad we'll get to hear about today. Ingrid's led conversations around the world, at the Centre Pompidou in Paris, at TEDx Brooklyn, Harvard, Oxford, many other places. I'm very proud to say she now lives in Johannesburg with me, not quite in my house, but like in my city. Which is really great. She's been featured in the New York Times, Time Magazine, to name a few. She's a member of the APF, so there's some APFers in the house. You can whoop whoop. And currently attending the University of Houston, which I think is known to many of us, doing an MS in Foresight. You can find her at ingridlafleur.com. I'd like to hand over to you and thank you so much for agreeing to be here.
Thank you so much, Geci. And it's a pleasure to be here for sure. I've wanted to be in Dubai, wanted to be in this museum for so long. So this is definitely a dream come true. So I've been in Afrofuturism since the 90s, since it was coined. And it was a hobby of mine. And then I moved back home to Detroit, Michigan. And because, as many of you know, Detroit was hit hard by the housing crisis. It went into recession/depression. And I really thought that Afrofuturism could be a great tool for this majority Black city to imagine a new future. But it needs a little expansion of imagination, right? And I really thought I was bringing Afrofuturism to Detroit, and actually Detroit is already very, very Afrofuturistic. And so this is what you will find. Afrofuture exists. We just kind of find it and then label it. And oftentimes then play with that and expand upon it, which my work does. I've been intersecting Afrofuturism with politics and tech over the years, and so I like to say that I like to bring Afrofuture thought into practice. So we are always inspired, as you can see, why I'm into Afrofuturism, because of people like David's work, that this is why it helps to really expand what is possible. And when you're especially Black American, as I am, the narratives, our destiny, are already told to us. And so Afrofuturism is really about determining your own destiny, creating your own narrative. But over time, I really wanted hardcore methods to really researching the future. The future was coming fast at us, and you can see it in Detroit. For instance, facial recognition. Able to kind of see that coming towards us, and be able to kind of manage it before it even gets to the point where we have to actively advocate for it to not exist, right? And that's the issue. And really, I'm inspired by activists. They're always in reactive mode, and I really wanted to know what it would be like to be in proactive mode. So I have developed a method that brings together foresight methods and Afrofuturism with a touch of design. And I call it the Dinkinesh method. Dinkinesh is a wonderful woman who was born 3.5 million years ago in what is now Ethiopia. And her name is Amharic, and it means you are marvelous. And I absolutely see her as the Black mother of us all. And this is me saying we all have the capacity to develop an Afrofuture consciousness. It is all latent within us, and this method is to help kind of bring that forward. So there are 5 portals to my method. This one is living myth. Living myth is the time that we around ourselves, a story that is very empowering, then we become that which will help bring forth the future vision that we're imagining. And this is in the tradition of the jazz musician Sun Ra, who said that he was from the planet Saturn, dressed in regalia every single day, wrote poems about this. He lived his myth. And I'm actually, you know, I have Afrofuturist friends who are like, are you living your myth? And I'm like, sure, I am. But I think that the practice of creating your own myth is really important. Also in this portal, I ask you to create a sacred space within your intimate space. We need these places of grounding. My Afrofuturism is spiritual and ancestral based. I am very much believing that we need to reconnect with the spirit in order to be more grounded and connected to the earth and the cosmos. I think that that's part of our depression of humanity. And so the sacred space within your home, you're supposed to return to often throughout this journey. I don't say workshop, but it's a journey that we go through. But hopefully that continues beyond that time period. Also, you have a name that we only use during the time that I'm working with you. In fact, to this moment, there are people that I went through this journey with and I only know that name. And people are like, wait, you mean John? I'm like, no. His name is like Cosmo or whatever. Like, I don't know any other name and I refuse to call you anything else but that superhero or mythic name. So dark matter is when we get into the systems. And as David outlined that, we culturally are dealing with a lot of dystopia. Our apocalypse has already happened. So we don't really need to dive into, you know, imagining the worst case scenario. Got it, we already know, check. So it's here that I think a lot of people don't really understand systemic racism, racial capitalism, necropolitics. We want to get into it. And this is where, or this is why culturally specific futures are necessary. Right now, what I found in Foresight and Futures work, it's very broad stroke. Even this morning, they were talking about, 5 languages, when there's over 1,000 languages in Africa alone. So you're just ignoring, you know, millions, if not billions of people on this earth who speak different types of languages, who want to keep speaking those languages into the future, and why not? Especially if we're going to have all this quantum computing AI, we can have these different languages, can't we? And so it's really important to dive into how these systems keep us limited, ignore and exclude, so that when we're imagining a new system, we're not bringing that mindset into play. I like to say when we think about like crypto and blockchain technology, I was really big into it. I really like social impact blockchain tech projects, but oftentimes people are bringing their capitalist mind into that space when it actually was in resistance to capitalism, right? And so because we just don't know any other way, we have to have money, we have to have extraction, we have to exploit. We don't really know any other way to do it, and so we just imagine a new way to do that. Right? And so dark matter really wants you to dive into the darkness to find the light. Cosmic magic. And this is where I kind of challenge people. I really want you to create an altar to your ancestors. If I did not have these amazing ancestors, I would not be here today. And I just want to honor all the ancestors in the room today. And it is really important, and this is a tradition that was definitely taken away from us, especially those of us in Black America. And so I want to reconnect us to that and honor it. Also, there's a lot of magic in our communities, in our families that we don't really talk about, right? So in the last journey that I did, everybody was like, oh, but we're super, super Christian. And I was like, okay, so tell me about some superstitions that you guys might have. So the superstitions started coming out, and then all of a sudden, people started talking about the metaphysical experiences that they have in their lives. It is present in all of our lives. It's just suppressed, repressed in different ways, and I like to bring it to the surface. And then we can see, what do we want to bring into the future? I also do a little bit of mapping there. You know, what was our relationship to the earth, the cosmos, the spirit, to the ancestors, to the griot, the storyteller, to the healer, and to the alchemist. And I want us to see what was that in the ancient past, near past, present, and what could that be in the future. reconnecting to those like traditions, as David was talking about, is really, really important. And bringing that forward and seeing how that can work within this kind of modern world. Altered destiny is when I turn you into a futures researcher. I really believe that everyone needs to have a little bit of that skill. It's really important to do that scanning every day, to understand what's on the horizon within your community. And here, people, we know about it, but within communities, they don't. So they're usually the last to know, especially if you're part of a marginalized, vulnerable, oppressed community. So I'm trying to say, like, hey, there is a way for us to know ahead of time. Again, this is me wanting everyone to be more proactive, right? But in order to be proactive, we need the information. Also, it's just fun to learn about emerging tech and emerging science, right? And to see how can we mix that with the magic? How can we mix that with the alternative systems we created? And how can we do that from the perspective of our mythic self? And so this is the world building session that happens in the Alter Destiny portal. Finally, the continuum. Because shifting consciousness really is ultimately the goal here. And in order for that to happen, you need artwork like David's in your home. You need to come to your sacred space. You need to be working on this every day, all day. It doesn't just stop because that journey or workshop is done. You have to do it every day. It's hard work. Decolonization doesn't mean you just read a book, you learn a couple things and you're done. No, that's when the real work begins. And it's hard, and it's complicated, and it's uncomfortable, it's icky. It is not easy, but it's worth it, because that's where true liberation lies, and that is actually the goal, for all of us to be liberated. My black body cannot be liberated until everyone is liberated, and free, and happy, and in this pleasurable place. And so this is why I'm a pleasure activist. Throughout all of these portals, I'm always asking, where is the pleasure? You know, we have these policies, these laws, these ways of doing but it's not pleasurable, you know? Like even this space, this is probably the most pleasurable place that I've spoken in ever in my life. And I like that. I want scent. I want to be seduced. I want to feel desired, welcomed, because my black body often is not. And so pleasure for me is an act of resistance for sure. But who wants that resistance part that makes it feel a little like I'm at war? I'm not at war, I'm in love, okay? And I want us all to be in love. And I want that to be the foundation as we continue forward, as we're looking towards creating action to creating that future. If we do it out of love, that joy, that pleasure, it's going to be more sustainable. As we know, violence, dehumanization, control, all that does is create a reaction of more violence and dehumanization, right? And we don't want it. I think we're all tired of that. We're over it, been there, done it. Let's move on to something else. And so the continuum helps us to create these daily practices so that we're constantly manifesting those futures, developing that Afrofuture consciousness, so that we can live in that beautiful world we want to live in. I think the last point that I want to make is that my responsibility as a facilitator, I have to be in a particular energy space. And I think that this is really important, and Geci kind of spoke about this. I am Black American. I am an Afrofuturist. I can only speak about cultures within that realm. It is not necessarily my space to go beyond that, but I can create frameworks for other cultures to do so, to do your own investigation, to dig into your own indigenous traditions, those pre-colonial spaces, that pre-feudal space, whatever it is for you, right? But at the exact same time, I energetically have to be balanced. The last journey I did, I was barefoot because the ancestors called for it. I always create an altar when I give my journeys. I always do meditations. This is all laying a nice foundation. And I also ask every participant to bring an object that helps to ground them, because futuring can be triggering, especially if you're from an oppressed group. This is not just, you know, like, yay, I get to imagine. And again, this is the problem with the broad stroke. You forget the nuances. You forget how our histories are different, and thus our futures, imagining the futures can be very difficult sometimes. And so having that object to ground you, to hold you, to love you, to remind you, to recenter is really important as well. That's all I have to give. May the Afrofuture be with you.
I'm not at war, I'm in love.
Yeah.
Love it. Thank you so much, Ingrid. I'm actually going to stay with you first. I'm just going to ask 2 quick questions, and then please be ready with, and I think we have some mics going around, right? So Ingrid, I love that you brought in that, so obviously we're a very globalized group here, and I love that you've spoken to what your truth is and what you can present and engage with. How does that often resonate with other people? So I don't know, on these journeys, is it always people who are African American or African, and for people who are not, what does it feel like, or how do they respond to it? So what do you offer that's more universal than you?
So I recently did a journey for an African Leadership Institute in Arizona. And that was a really beautiful space. We really dug in deep. It was great. And then I did one in Germany, which was a majority white audience. And they absolutely loved it, but I did have some participants of color walk out. They did not feel like it was a safe space. So as a facilitator, I'm dealt with, like, it's something that I'm still sitting with. How do I work with different bodied people in one space? How do I make sure it's safe? It's a complicated question. And
I think that there's beauty in giving a new scent or a new taste of stories that, like I said, have been told for millennia. It's just reinterpreting them through different mediums, through different contexts, through different machines, and often it leads to interesting results that are familiar, again, like I said, familiar, but at the same time, surreal. Yeah.
Okay, great. We've just got a few minutes, but I'd like to open, okay, the hands are popping up. Can we take a few? I know that, yeah, we've got a few minutes we can do. So, okay, let's see. So now, how do we do this? How many questions can we take? How much time can we take?
Two.
Two questions. Okay, so only 2 questions. Yo. Okay, you have to, if you take one, you better be really good. So let's take one in the middle there. Let's take one there. And then if you don't mind, I'll cheat and just take a third on the side. So one in the middle, one on the side. Please go for it, man.
Yes, thank you, Ingrid, for using the word futuring. In our practice, we really like to believe that future is a verb, so I appreciate that usage. My question is that my organization works a lot with governments and NGOs, and we have global projects that have to look, I wonder if you could offer any advice for how to kind of strengthen our ability without using tokenism, basically to say, well, we found this very narrow band of information, to have a more holistic, inclusive, and sort of equitable